not all problems, not all choices, not all decisions are made equal. And I want you to go back through, look through your list of examples, and you can see some are clearly easier, more straightforward, more direct, more clear to decide than others, right? And the way that we classify these is by saying they sit on a continuum. So we say one end is what we call structured. Okay, there you go, one end. And the other side, because it's the opposite, is called unstructured. Okay? Now, the idea is that all decisions, all choices, all problems about which a decision has to be made, they sit somewhere on this continuum. Okay? They'll be more towards one end, more towards the other. It's very, very, very unusual for something to be completely one or completely the other. So in the middle, you've got sort of semi-structured. It's kind of like an in-between, right? But problems will definitely lean one way or the other. So even though you might not necessarily be exactly here or exactly there, these are still very useful categories to think in terms of. Okay? So what do I mean? Well, let's consider a problem like, say, the weather. Okay, so I'm gonna go down here and say examples. And what we're going to do is think about some examples which draw out properties of different kinds of problems, structured or unstructured. Okay. So I said the weather. Now, do you think this is an easy or a hard thing to predict? Easy or hard? Is it a straightforward or is it a difficult problem to solve? If you were trying to predict the weather, how easy would it be to make a decision based on this? Okay. Now I think it's basically a hard decision. Okay, it's not easy to make this decision. You need a lot of information and a lot of computational power to do it. The reason why, I can think of at least two reasons. Okay. Number one, okay, weather is very chaotic, right? It's unpredictable. Okay, all kinds of crazy things sort of happen. Things which, even though we have all of this great knowledge, you know, for instance, if there's a really, really bad tornado or tsunami or hurricane or something like that, how much notice do we have generally? Does anyone know? Like, what kind of time scale are we talking about? Do we know weeks in advance? Not generally. Not generally. Even if it's like biggest ones in history, okay? Do you know it minutes in advance? You'd probably know it by then, right? At least. So it's somewhere in between there, okay? So where I'd probably say maybe a few days or something like that. Okay, and they're like, next week this thing's going to hit, you can see it's on the coast, it's forming, and then it's going to come onto land. Okay? So even though there are these really large events, they're hard to predict, they're chaotic, okay? So this is a problem. This is a quality of an unstructured problem. There's one, okay? Number one, it's chaotic. If the situation you're looking at is hard to predict, okay? So obviously the flip side of that, for something to be structured, means it is very predictable. Okay? Always does the same thing every single time, okay? Now, what else? Well, let's think about a question, a decision, like say, I think it was Pock who suggested one of the decisions you have to make, maybe on an annual basis, is I have to get presents for people. Okay, presents, you have to buy gifts for people, okay? So let's just narrow it down a little bit. Weather was one example. Suppose you determine you want to get someone music, okay? You want to buy someone an album or a song or a bunch of songs, okay? How do you choose? How do you choose? How do you come up with the decision of what's the best album, for instance? What's the best album for person X? Right, that you're trying to buy music for. How do you come up with a decision like that? How do you come with an answer? Yeah.
So if they're true fans, they don't really mind.
Okay. Good. All right. So hold on. Number one, if they're really devoted to like a particular band or something like that, okay, then it's sort of safe. You can just get anything from this band, and it doesn't matter if it's terrible or not. They'll like it. Okay. But then, you know, what if it's not? What if they don't have any particular band that they're like totally devoted to? What kinds of decisions, what kind of factors would affect your decision? Any thoughts?
They already have it.
Okay, but if they earn it or not. So they're simple ones. I'm trying to make a choice between all of these different ones, right? Other things like, say, genre. Okay? Right? How about things like, say, length or features or maybe even within a genre you like particular songs and not others. Okay. Now, do you see what's the problem? This is not a chaotic situation. Okay. But well, what makes it hard to decide here? What's the problem here? What's the challenge? Why is music a hard decision to pick out? Yeah, Ricky. Good. Everyone has different tastes. So there's a word for that, right? We have one word for that, which is that this kind of problem is subjective. Subjective. Okay? So it's like everyone sort of has their own opinion. Okay? What if you were trying to put a score on, for instance, a piece of art? Okay? And you get 5 different people, you'll get 5 different scores. Okay? So everyone disagrees. It's subjective. This is a difficult choice to make. Obviously, the opposite of that is objective. Okay? If it's like, well, the thing that makes a song good is that it's long. Right? Just the length of a song. That's the only property that's important about it, right? Well, that's very objective. Everyone can agree. Oh, such and such a song is 3 minutes and 53 seconds. So that's something everyone has to agree upon, right? But good music is not about just something as simple and objective as that, right? Okay. You also have things like, say, I'm going to come over to this side now, when you've got a structured problem. If you've got a problem which can be solved mathematically, okay? Or another way of saying it is algorithmically, with an algorithm. Okay? If something can be solved just by maths, that's really easy, okay? So for instance, if I have a question, okay, are you, your body type, right? Are you heavy or light? Or, you know, you underweight or overweight or right in the middle or sort of above or below, okay? Now, in terms of judging that, there's a mathematical way to determine that, right? We give it a name. Actually, we give it an acronym. What do we use? BMI. We use the body mass index, right? BMI, okay? So what is the BMI? It's like weight over height squared, right? Now, can you see all of those things, well, just weight and height, right? They're objective, okay? Everyone can agree, you know, on how many kilos and how many centimeters, right? How many meters. And then you just pop it into a formula. Okay, and so that'll give you a decision very easily as to whether someone is underweight, overweight, you know, obese, that kind of thing. Okay, so what would be the opposite of this? What's the opposite of a problem which you can solve like mathematically? It's sort of abstract. That's not a bad word. Okay, you might say it's qualitative as opposed to quantitative. Okay, again, I'm looking at, say, the art piece, right? I can't put that into a formula and it'll automatically tell me, oh, what's the best kind of, you know, painting or something like that. Okay. Okay, so what have I got here? One more phrase to put on each. Okay, this sort of gets at why it's called structured or unstructured, okay? We call structured problems well-defined, and we call unstructured problems ill-defined. Here's the idea. If you're in a situation, and this is sort of like with the weather, right? And you know lots of information about it, okay? It's well-defined. Then that helps you to make decisions about it, if you know lots of things, okay? But if it's ill-defined, if it's like you have to make a choice, but there's lots of things you don't know, okay? There's lots of things that you can't know about the situation, okay? Then that's hard, okay? Do you guys remember, did I show you? The video about the Martian rover Curiosity, right? That was landing onto the surface of Mars. And there were all of these unknowns in the situation that made the problem very hard to solve, right? For instance, we can't actually manually control, its descent into the atmosphere because it's too far away, right? We can't send signals. So all this information about where it's entering, what speed it's going, what direction it's pointing, etc., etc. Those things are hard to know, right, in advance. So that's an ill-defined problem, okay? And when you take all of these together, can you see how you've got structured and unstructured, right? In some senses, you could say the way to make a decision about this kind of problem is very, there's a well-defined structure to it, okay? You can know exactly what steps you go through, and you can come up with a decision. As opposed to over here, where it's like, I don't even know where to start. How do I make a decision, and how do I know if it's the right decision? Okay. So, let me give you an example, and you try and think about this. Okay. Let's come about. Actually, I'll give you a couple of examples. Okay. Let's think about marking exams. Okay. Now, you guys don't have to do much marking, lucky you. Okay, but you can still get your mind into the head of a marker, right? Is marking an exam a structured problem, or is it an unstructured problem? What do you think?
If it's multiple choice.
Okay, alright. Now, so the first answer is, it depends, right? If it's multiple choice, it's way over this side, isn't it? Okay, very, very well defined. You know exactly what the things are. It's very objective. It's right or it's wrong. Yes? Okay, good. So there's multiple choice. What about other kinds of problems though? Because not everything is multi-choice, right? Where else would you categorize things?
Maths.
Okay, so we said maths. Obviously, you can have maths that's multiple choice, right? But other kinds of stuff, like an extended response question, right? If it's worth 3 marks, okay, people will disagree on where the 3 marks should go or what something is worth. You see, there's some subjectivity that's trying to creep in, okay? And then you can creep even further over this side, okay? Not all the way, but say something like, I would say art or music, okay? Yeah, it's hard to say where exactly they go because, you know, partly because I don't have much of an artistic eye, I don't know what the qualities are that people measure, right? Because, you know, when I look at, what was that called? I think it was called Blue Poles or something. Did you guys hear about it? It was just a painting. It was a canvas that was covered in blue paint. That's it. And apparently it was a masterpiece. It got into like the Contemporary Museum of Contemporary Art and all that kind of thing. So I don't know what those qualities are, okay, but some people do. So it's down this end, but it's not all the way unstructured. Like people can still say this is good art and this is bad art, okay? But it still leans in this direction, okay?